Welcome to the Stories with Traction podcast. I'm your host, Matt Zaun. Thank you for joining us as we uncover how stories are one of the most important aspects of your business. We'll talk about struggles, victories, and how you can utilize strategic storytelling to inspire those around you to action. Enjoy this episode. Part 2 with Dan Koval, Corporate Social Responsibility. So this is an extension of the last episode. So if you have not listened to the episode regarding the what behind corporate social responsibility, I highly encourage you to go do so. Pause this episode and go listen to the previous episode regarding the what. And in that episode, Dan Koval and I talked about what is your community, what do you want to be known for, and what is corporate social responsibility and what it is not. And we really did a deep dive into all the different elements of what. Well, now we're going to take it a step further and we're going to talk about the why. So Dan, welcome back to the Stories with Traction podcast.
Matt, as always, it is my pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and getting to discuss this topic that's a passionate part of my life. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to dive in deeper because we covered the what. We talked extensively on different elements of what regarding CSR. And now let's dive into the why. So this is really important for companies to understand the why behind why they're doing different things. So let's dive into that why. And there are many reasons why a company would want to have a robust corporate social responsibility arm of their company. So can you take us through some of them, and then we'll dive deeper into unpacking different elements of the why behind CSR?
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. And I think it just goes with a normal as humans can be, a normal human psyche in terms of you can tell someone what they need to do, right? Whether I'm speaking with my children, I'm speaking to a neighbor, I'm speaking to a coworker, and I say, can you go do this? Can you go get this for me? Can you go drive to the store? Can you go complete this project? And a lot of times people will do it, but they'll do it to whatever degree they feel like doing it. But once you inject the why behind what they're doing, it then exponentially increases their output. And I think the why is the natural progression from the what of yesterday, right? Just like you had mentioned, we talked about what is our community and what do we want to be known for. And I think that the why is just the natural progression. It's just what bleeds out of it is, why does it matter I'm a part of the community? Why does it matter people have a good feeling about our business? And so when it comes to corporate social responsibility, the why ties in very nicely to what a company's stated values are, to the mission, to kind of what the company's about and why they exist. And then we'll talk a little about this, I guess, tomorrow, is the how that all functions together, right? And I think it's that those three questions there together. It's a very succinct plan for how a company can go through the efforts of creating a CSR strategy, right? We talked about that a lot yesterday, was the strategy, and we'll probably go into that more in the next episode. And so I think the why kind of encompasses the company's values, their mission, and how they want to present themselves to the community at large.
So let's talk about the community, but from an internal perspective. So we can get to the external community and circle back to the what regarding community in a moment. But I think what's on a lot of people's minds, especially business leaders across the country. So when I travel to different states, there's the same theme. Doesn't matter what state I'm in, what region, what city I'm in. The overwhelming consensus that I hear from business leaders, whether they're CEOs, they're executives, they're directors, the overwhelming challenge is, how do I win the talent war? How do I retain top talent? So from a community perspective, an internal community, a lot of that goes back to company culture. That if we have such an incredible company culture, people are not going to want to leave. They would be out of their minds to leave because they want to be in a positive, uplifting, fulfilled, awesome culture. So let's talk about company culture, but from a CSR lens. What does corporate social responsibility do to a company culture?
So as a company, as they get their quote unquote legs under them and they start developing business, right? There's this natural progression, right? You try, fail, and adjust, and you start making pizzas, right? We talked about pizzas the other day. We talked about making cars. We talk about, you know, being in the medical industry. You start helping people get healthier, whatever all that is that you're doing, providing, or creating as part of your organization. In the midst of that, you want good people because you want people that are passionate, not just about crunching the numbers, making the pizzas, doing the things that they're doing, but you also want good people that are tied to that mission of the company and that are invested personally. I had a friend of mine, she has been with a nonprofit. She's been running a bunch of their programs. She's a program manager for them, running it phenomenally for a number of years. And she's looking for her next step. And so I said to her, I was like, oh, what about coming into the for-profit world? Maybe you can make a little bit more money. And her immediate response was, I can't find any for-profit companies that actually care about what they're doing. And I was like, oh, that's painful to me, given what I do professionally. And so it was very telling of what the environment is out there.
So I appreciate you mentioning that story, but and I know that there is a lot of truth to that. However, there are companies that are doing incredible things in the community. There are companies that are making significant differences within the community that they've identified. So for someone that is thinking in that way, so obviously this individual wants to have a huge impact, wants to feel fulfilled. What would you tell to a company that just heard what you said? What would the wake up call be for them on how to create an environment of fulfillment, of impact? Because as many people know, listening to this podcast, there's a huge wave of millennials coming into leadership positions in companies. And at the top of every survey, they're saying they want to have an impact and they want to feel fulfilled. So how does CSR fill both of those needs?
I think it's I'm gonna steal your tagline here, Matt. Right, or one of your taglines is share more stories. It's not just that you have a list of the partner organizations for your business on your About Us page. It's about your marketing team, your sales reps, whoever is running your social media channels, right? Are they telling the stories of the business itself, right? That's a great story to always be telling. But then also, are they telling the stories of the organizations they're in partnership with? If we think back to the auto industry example from yesterday, or from the last podcast, and we talk about how if you're an auto manufacturer and you're thinking about safety, are you telling people not just, hey, we have the nicest, newest seatbelts and airbags, but also, hey, here's what we're doing for the next generation of drivers and ensuring them to stay safe, right? I think there's plenty of companies, plenty of for-profit companies, you're absolutely correct, that are doing good things. They're just not telling anyone. And if they are telling them, they're telling them in ways that aren't compelling stories, saying, hey, company X just sponsored this golf outing. And then, 2/3 the way down the poster or whatever is what the golf outing benefits, right? Below the line sort of thing. I think that's where we all fall short. We assume that just some images or maybe just tagging something on social media is what it takes to get it done. We're not telling effective stories when it comes to CSR.
So along the lines of the story piece, I want people to kind of pick apart their processes when it comes to these stories and what CSR empowers them to do regarding stories. So as an example, along the lines of creating a powerful company culture that ultimately leads to winning the talent war and retaining top talent, what are the questions that your company gets asked over and over again during the interview process? So this is really important. So people are really starving for having very high caliber talent come into their organization, and they get asked a lot of times the same questions over and over again. So in the event you have a candidate in an interview process asking one of your leaders A, B, and C, we communicate through words. So they may be saying words, but there might be a root emotion attached to those words. More than not, there's a root attachment, a root emotion attached. And the emotion could be that they're excited to do something in the community above and beyond selling the product or service. They want to know that they're having a big impact. So knowing that and knowing the questions that come up, that recruiter is going to want to share stories in regards to this corporate social responsibility to show, not just tell, but show what the company is doing through story. That is so unbelievably powerful that it empowers organizations to actually live up to their values. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I always challenge companies to not focus on company core values, at least the words of those core values. So typically I'll say, stop focusing on company core values, focus on company core stories. The power of that is we think in pictures. So saying something and actually doing something not only is different, but what we say has a different picture. So if a company's saying, we value the community, or whatever a value or mission is going to be, what are the stories that exemplify what they're saying? And you can really do that through CSR, and you can do it through every different element of your company, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, tear apart all the different processes that you have. What are the questions that are being asked? How does CSR fill the void in that regard? So I want you to talk about values, some of the values that you've seen regarding CSR. So a company obviously has different values. They have a reason for existing. Now, what do they do with that in regards to CSR? Expand it out for us a little bit, Dan, regarding that why and how it adheres to values.
Real quick, I'm going to jump back and just address the talent war situation just for a quick moment and remind you, because I assume you haven't filled out a college application in a little bit, right? I mean, I myself haven't done it in a lot of bit. And so I do get to work with a lot of high school students through my career. And one of the things that colleges, from my understanding, if that's the path you're going, are looking for is for volunteer work. And guess where that information goes? It goes on the resume. It goes on the CV. It goes on your LinkedIn profile. Guess what makes it super easy for a recruiter or a hiring manager or whomever to find out what an individual is passionate about? Go look at their volunteer opportunities and figure out how to match that person's volunteer efforts to the values and the core stories that the company has, and be able to say, oh, I see you were a moderator at your high school chess club, Sally. Way to go. You did a great job. Did you know that we're interested in helping the next generation of students to get involved in math, or we're interested in helping the next generation of students get involved in engineering or something along those lines? You can very easily see what someone themselves is passionate about and then tie it to those core stories you were talking about. And you're absolutely correct, Matt. We throw out these, our 5 pillars, our 5 core values, our 7 acts of leadership, or whatever verbiage we use. And companies will say, okay, we're about honesty, we're about trust, we're about this, that, and the other thing. And most organizations, in my experience, have generally the same core values because they want to be decent people, right? You want to be a respected organization. You want to produce good products. You want to hire good people. You want to serve your community, and vice versa. But what does being responsible look like? You know, for the pizza shop example we talked about in the first episode, being responsible might be something along the lines of not just sponsoring the local sports team, but also sponsoring some cleanup efforts in the park after the games, right? Maybe the pizza shop hosts a community cleanup day on a Tuesday afternoon after kids get out of school, parents are available, and they're like, hey, everyone get together, we'll bring some pizza and some drinks, and we'll all hang out and clean up, right? That's how they can show responsibility, because they've tied it to their core values, they've tied it to their community, and they've tied it to their customers as well. And they found a way to kind of connect and mesh all those things together. And so the words are important, but the action and the why behind the words, I think, are just as important. And that's why those core stories are needed, so that when you do communicate that to people, people can fully visualize the picture in their mind of what those values and that mission means to your organization and how they get to be a part of that, right? We all want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to have meaning and impact and legacy. And I think it's through these CSR core stories that you're talking about here, Matt. I think that's a really effective way to make that happen.
So as far as the why, let's get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts regarding the why. So you have an organization, obviously they have a why, and they could have many whys. So they have a product or service, so they exist to maximize profit, cut expenses. Absolutely. They're in business to make money, not lose money, but so that's part of the why. But also they have different values, they have mission, they have core principles, whatever you want to call them. And oftentimes they go deeper than business. And that's something I really want people to recognize is most company core values, they talk about integrity, they talk about character, they talk about whatever it is they're talking about. That goes deeper than business, than just making dollars. So how are they living that out through CSR? How are they, I had mentioned to people to stop focusing on these company core values, the words, and focusing on the company core story. So if one of your quote unquote values is integrity and you do A, B, and C, how does focusing on supporting the community through CSR exemplify that integrity? That's going to mean different things to different people. But I think a good place to start is for organizations to really focus on what do you say you stand for, and then how are you backing it up deeper than just sharing a product or service for dollars. How does it go deeper than that? Because most of your values are deeper than dollars. So what would you recommend to leaders of organizations that they're hearing this and they're saying, well, what do I do with it? What do I, they may understand the why, tie the why into the value for us regarding CSR. What would that look like? They would look at their core values and they say, here's what I stand for. Now, where do they go from there?
Yeah, I think the picture that I'm seeing, and I'll try to use my best words to explain the picture that I'm seeing so it conveys correctly, is almost a Venn diagram of sorts, right? We talked about what community you're in, right? Locating where in the world you are. Are you a hyper local in a small town? Are you multinational or somewhere in between those two things? And also, what are you going to be known for? Right? I think the example that I gave in the first episode was something like someone, your employee or someone in the community gets off the bus outside the bus stop in front of your building and they see your logo or your name or your emblem or your sign, and like what's their immediate thought? And so I think part of that ties into the core values, right? You want to be known for integrity, you want to be known for respect, you want to be known for trust or value. And obviously you're a business, you have to be fiscally responsible with what you're doing. But in the same way that companies offer things like vacation or PTO time, medical or health benefits, there's been I believe, a large increase in terms of like mental health services, which has been phenomenal throughout recent history, that people need those things. And you're right, those are the things that go deeper than the surface of making money. I mean, I would assume that if most businesses didn't need the humans, they'd probably cut a lot of those things, because that those things are costly and they cut in the bottom line. And so finding those organizations locally, and yeah, I define, again, locally is defined as in your community, whatever your community looks like, finding those organizations that have some of that mission or values alignment that makes logical sense for you to partner with, and then empower that organization, that nonprofit, that non-government organization to be able to then further their mission. Because what a great way to get other people to know about that nonprofit or what they're doing than by using your corporate platforms to share that. It's that third party validation that people see out there in the workplace. That's why recommendations on LinkedIn are so powerful. That's why a warm introduction from person A to person B is so helpful to person C, because cold calls are hard, warm leads are easy, right? And so being able to use that to tie your core values into whatever those local organizations are you can partner with. Again, if you're a pizza shop, maybe it's the local sports team. If you're car manufacturing, maybe it's, whether it's an environmental resource or it's a safety aspect. I think offline, Matt and I talked a little bit about the medical industry and talking about, now I'm completely losing what we were talking about, but there are ways that, we were talking about like time off and volunteer hours and stuff like that. But what is your business about? What is your mission? Are you just trying to sell widgets? If so, then you might, if that's it, if that's all your business is about is just simply cutting costs and selling widgets, then you might be struggling to have some of that CSR stuff. But there are unique and specific opportunities all around you that you can tap into to be able to leverage the power of the CSR and the storytelling side of it.
So let's go into the example, just a company that exists to sell widgets. You had mentioned one of the largest expenses is employees, but a lot of companies are waking up to the fact that they want to have the best, robust team, the most top talented individuals in their organization. They want to have an amazing team. They understand the value of investing in their people. So maybe there have been different positions that have been frivolous and they've realized like we can't have that as an organization from a financial perspective, and that's understandable. That's just business. However, there is something to be said about heavily investing in a team to not only get a job done, but to get it done well and to actually carry out a massive mission in the marketplace. And with that said, you had mentioned a lot of companies now are focusing on health, the health of their employees. There's tons of different programs that companies are rolling out regarding being in a healthy, not only physically, but also mental health as well. So even if a company is just focused primarily on widgets, this company can still take a lot of a big Y away from CSR in the realm that they want their team to be engaged to sell more widgets. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure your employees feel safe. They feel like they're adding value. So how do you do that? And we had talked a little bit, you had started to allude to regarding different things that you can do for your employees. So this kind of dives a little bit more into the how, but also I still think it touches on the why from an organizational perspective. And here's what I mean by that. You had mentioned, Dan, earlier, volunteer days. So I want you to go into that. And I want people listening to understand why this is important to do. So a lot of these companies are screaming about winning the talent war, about retaining top talent. They're already doing different things regarding health, physical health, when it comes to healthcare, different programs. Here's something for mental health that's really, really important. So volunteer days, I want you to dive into that. And I want people to start seeing the correlation on why this ties back into their why. So tell us about volunteer days, what that means to an organization and why they'd want to do it.
Yeah, and I just as you were explaining, or I guess setting up the question, I was thinking about it. I was like, man, this really ties back into my comments from earlier about having the hiring managers or the recruiters look at a person's CV or LinkedIn or whatever to see what they're passionate about. What an easy way for a company to find out what's at the heart of their employees and figure out what directions to potentially go in terms of CSR, or to find out where people are passionate. And let me explain. And so volunteer days, volunteer hours, those sorts of things is some sort of vacation slash time off slash PTO that a company will give its employees to be able to go spend some of their working day or working days out at a nonprofit or charity or service opportunity of that person's choice. Now it's up to the company as to how much digital overhead, how much data, how much tracking that they want to do, right? This is kind of where the CSR versus ESG conversation we had yesterday kind of comes into play. But the beauty is in the details and how much data you do track. And so you're a small company, you've got 100 employees, and you give them each one full working day a year to go out and to volunteer, and they go out. You can easily track 100 people. You got 10,000 people, you got Microsoft's the tens and tens of thousands of people, Amazon, hundreds of thousands of employees. Maybe a little harder to track. Maybe you need to find some better digital systems and solutions to do that. But what a great way to find out what your employees are passionate about if they're willing to take a work day where they're paid, right? So they're paid their normal pay. They just have the time to not be at their desk or standing at the factory line or wherever it is they would normally be responsible for being to do their job. And they get to go out and serve the community. And so how you decide to track that, hey, track the organization they're serving, track the park that they worked at, something like that. And you as the company can retain that data, and you find out, oh, out of our 100 employees, 30 of them all went to the local homeless shelter to help them repaint all of their rooms where people get to sleep overnight. Well, I think anything that my company does where 30% of my employees all do the same thing, I think that's a huge data point for you as the quote unquote business owner, you as the executive, you as the manager, you as HR, to know, hey, maybe this is an opportunity for us to go a little deeper as a company with this homeless shelter, for example, with this organization. Maybe we want to sponsor an event. Maybe we want to have someone from the company serve on the board of that nonprofit and create a deeper partnership and a deeper relationship with them. And so what a great way to promote the giving back in the community through the volunteer day or volunteer hours, however you want to do it. And then an even more phenomenal next step is to be able to take that data back and organize it in such a way that you're able to say, hey, what's important to my employees? Where are their values? Where are they passionate about? What community are they in? What do they want to be known for, right?
Yeah, and this goes back to the whole example regarding widgets that you had mentioned. So now the company that is really focused on selling widgets, awesome. But their people recognize to them that it's not just about selling widgets, it's about all these different things that they're doing in the community. They're going to get so much more buy-in from employees. It's not even going to be funny. The employees are going to be more engaged. They're going to feel like they're making a difference because they're going to see the team tackling different issues in the community and the profound impact that has. So we're talking about volunteer days. Let's dive into volunteer dollars. And can you explain to people the difference and some ideas people can have regarding volunteer dollars and how it ties back into their why?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's similar in aspect, with the exception that instead of an employee, let me get my English language correct here, instead of an employee using their paid time off or whatever we call it, their volunteer hours of during the week time or whatever their normal schedule is, right? I feel like most normal schedules are kind of out the window at this point. You, as the company, will track the number of hours that your employee serves at any particular nonprofit. Again, could be a soup kitchen, could be a local park cleanup, could be a homeless shelter, could be a pet shelter, right? The local pet shelters and sanctuaries and stuff like that. Could be just about anything. And you create a formula. Now, when I say formula, I'm not talking about like an Excel spreadsheet that maps out how many times the letter I is used in the dictionary, but a very simple rudimentary formula that says so many hours equals so many dollars of investment. And so you tie that employee's personal efforts and their time outside the company, their service hours, to actual dollars that go into this nonprofit that they're serving at. And so, for example, if this person served, hey, 2 hours a week, they picked one night, one Saturday morning, one afternoon, or whatever it is, and they did only 2 hours a week throughout the course of the year. That's over 100 hours. Okay, now that's a huge savings to the nonprofit having 100 hours of volunteer given to them. Right, that's free work to the nonprofits. That's phenomenal. But if you tied in a monetary donation from your company that the employee worked at, how much more of a benefit would that be for everyone? Right. So now the nonprofit, they're getting free service from the volunteer showing up, and they're getting a financial support. The employee slash volunteer, they're taking their own personal time and investing it in the nonprofit and getting backed and supported and encouraged and valued by their company, and being told, hey, we love that you're doing this. We support you and the causes that are important to you. And then the corporation is saying, hey, we're not losing any productivity on our employee. They're here. They're doing their full job. They're taking their extra effort and energy on their own personal time and investing in the nonprofit. And then we're just taking some of our intended community investment dollars, and we're investing it specifically into an organization that we know is good because we trust our employee. Right. I think there's a lot of core values that get hit in this relationship here. And it's a way to just exponentially increase all of it. Right. You as the employee, if you are already volunteering at, say, the soup kitchen, right? It was already part of your own personal natural habits, and your company comes alongside of you and supports that organization financially. You can make all the wages you want in the world, but nothing will endear a person to their company like being told, we affirm what you believe and what you value. And man, you will have that person as an employee for a very long time, because the moment they leave your company, that financial support stops as well. And so it's a great way to encourage long-term relationships between the company, the employee, and the nonprofit.
And this really ties back into what we had talked about in the beginning, which is company culture. It radically adds to the company culture. And then it also ties back to the overarching why that we're talking about here. And a lot of companies will say, we don't want to have a revolving door business. We don't want to bring top talent in, train them, put a ton of financial resources, investment, time into training this person just for them to go off to the next company. Well, there may be people listening to this that think to themselves, wow, like I'm investing in other nonprofits that my team members are a part of. You might actually be saving money, because think about how much money it costs to bring in people and train them and all these different things. I mean, there are companies that have different costs depending on industry, and it's astronomical. So by investing in the community that one serves, not only are they hitting all the whys regarding their values, but they're hitting the why on, we're actually saving money because we're doing good and investing, but we're also keeping people a lot longer. And imagine keeping a phenomenal employee for several more years than you would have based on their engagement, their impact, their fulfillment in the community based on these volunteer dollars. So I really appreciate you mentioning that, Dan.
Yeah, and one other thing, and this was a hidden nugget. I know Matt loves his nuggets, that came up while you were saying that. Man, what a great way for a company to know if your employees are the I'm going to do what I'm told, this is my responsibility and that's it type of employee, or if they're a I'm a go the extra mile person, right? What great data you get on your employees. Oh, are you just simply are you not participating in these sorts of opportunities, right? If you're not participating in these sorts of opportunities, if they're not looking for ways to be involved in the community, do you as a company really want this person, right? If they're just like, that's not my job, right? You get the that's not my job, Joe, right? He's everywhere, but what an easy way to identify him and kind of have him work his way out of the company. But then also, if it's, let's say it's 100 hours equals $100, right? That's probably not a great investment, but it's easy math. Do you just have someone who does simply the 100 or 101 hours in the year? Are they a minimum mentality or a maximum mentality? Is this someone who's trying to find ways of serving 200, 300 hours in a year? Again, whatever the thresholds are that you have for your company to be able to do the volunteer hours or the volunteer days, right? If you're doing a volunteer day during the work week, like we talked about originally, is this person doing it in January and getting it done and like looking for other opportunities to serve, or are they like waiting till December 20th and be like, oh right, I forgot about this, maybe I should go do this now? I think it's just very telling of the culture of the company, but also of the attitude of the employee as well. And what great feedback loop that you have as a company if you're tracking these things effectively and being able to implement systems to encourage and support your employees and be able to retain that top talent and continue them through the cycle, right? It's coming back again. January's coming soon. I'm going to get my volunteer day. I'm going to bank up my volunteer hour dollars. Like I think it's a phenomenal feedback loop for the organization.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I don't think I really processed that until you said it, that if I think about all the environments that I've been in that are pretty high achieving environments, from the political arena to sales and marketing to, there's a lot of different industries that I've had the opportunity to work with storytelling in and on. The ones that are the most go-getter-ish people, the ones that are the high achievers, the ones that add the most value to their workplace, typically are people that are involved in the community. They're actually doing things to make the community better. And I don't care where the person is in an organization, whether they're the CEO of a company of tens of thousands of people, whether they're an executive, whether they're a high-level sales professional, they want to be making a difference in the community. So based on what you said, Dan, that is a big indicator on just the DNA of the individual that's working for you. Who are they to their core? Really, who are they? Not only as, I'm not saying who are they like they're Bob, but who is Bob to his core? Like who is Sally to her core? They're not just people working at your company. They believe in different things, and that is really going to show through with what you're saying. So, Dan, we did cover a lot in this episode regarding the why, and I want to highlight those different things and kind of explain kind of where we go from here. So, again, the last episode that we did, we touched on the what. Highly recommend everyone go and check out the what behind CSR. What is CSR, corporate social responsibility? What is the community that you're serving? What do you want to be known for? We talked about a lot of what's. This episode, we talked about whys. And some of the whys that we had talked about is company culture, creating an incredible company culture. And CSR can do that. It adds impact, it adds fulfillment, it adds value. We had talked about winning the talent war and retaining top talent. Why CSR can do that, how and why CSR can do that. We had talked about stop focusing on company core values, at least the words of those core values, and start focusing on company core stories. And by investing in corporate social responsibility, you're going to have tons and tons and tons of stories to pull from to promote internally and to promote externally. And that dives a little bit into marketing as far as externally. We will be talking about that on the next episode in this series when we start to dive into the how. So we wanted to lay all this out for everyone listening, to go through the what, to go through the why, and now the next step is to go through the how. So in the next episode, we're going to do a deep dive on the how on implementation of this, not just theory, but practicality. How can companies truly, in a practical, realistic manner, start doing these different things so they can accelerate the whys that we had talked about? So Dan, thank you so much for everything that you shared with us today. I think it's absolutely invaluable. If nothing else, I want people to start wrapping their minds around the why behind corporate social responsibility, and join us for the next episode when we really tackle this how. So Dan, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Matt. My pleasure. And I'm excited because I feel like I'm sitting on the edge of my seat myself right now. Right. Like you said, we talked about what needs to be done. We talked about why, and I think the why fires me up personally and gets me really excited. I just need some direction, and I feel like your listeners are probably the same way. And so I'm excited to talk about the how and give actual, concrete, tangible ideas of how people can implement these thoughts we've been talking about now. So I'm excited for the next episode. Thanks, Matt.
Absolutely. We are going to go from theory to practicality. So you understand the why now. So join us for the next episode when we tackle the how. Thank you for listening to the Stories with Traction podcast. If you have a story that you would like to share, feel free to drop an email to matt@mattzaun.com with the subject line Stories with Traction. Also, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, where I share tons of resources on how you can be a better storyteller. Remember, if you want to persuade with power and inspire those around you to action, you must share more stories.